The average American gardener spends around 70 hours a year in their garden. That is not a criticism, but it is a number that deserves a question. Are those 70 hours producing roughly what they should? For centuries before seed catalogs became what they are today, gardens worked differently. They did not ask for less attention, they asked for a different kind of attention. Not repeated work every spring on the same annual varieties, but an observation of what came back on its own. What reseeded itself, what swelled underground without being asked. Most of the plants I'm going to cover in this video share one thing. The seed industry has no interest in selling them to you. Not because they are uninteresting, but precisely because they are too interesting. A plant that comes back every year, spreads on its own, and never needs to be repurchased is a plant on which you cannot build a recurring commercial model. Here are 25 of those plants. Grouped by behavior, because understanding why they spread like weeds is more useful than knowing them alphabetically. But first, why we forgot all of this. After World War II, Western agriculture went through a standardization that had no real precedent. Munitions factories were converting into nitrogen fertilizer plants. Military equipment was becoming tractors. And the profitability model that took over was simple. Varieties that grow fast, harvest mechanically, ship long distances, and do not self-seed, so the farmer comes back to buy seeds every year. F1 hybrids took over. Productive, uniform, sterile, or near sterile, a commercially perfect product. And in that process, dozens of vegetables that did not fit those criteria disappeared from catalogs. Not because they did not work, because they worked too well on their own. What people call weeds today, their great-grandparents ate. Amaranth, purslane, orache. Those were vegetables, not intruders to eliminate. The line between a forgotten vegetable and an edible weed is often just a matter of which generation you are asking. Let us start with the first group, the Resurrectors. Plants you put in once and that come back without you lifting a finger. Number 1. Good King Henry, Chenopodium bonus henricus. A perennial leaf vegetable that looks like spinach but grows in conditions where ordinary spinach would refuse to show up. Poor soil, partial shade, and variable temperatures. The young shoots are eaten like asparagus, the mature leaves like spinach. The plant disappears in winter and returns in spring without you doing anything. Seeds have been found in European archaeological sites dating back to the Neolithic. It fed entire populations. Today you can barely find it in specialty catalogs. Number 2. Garden Orache, Atriplex hortensis. An annual that self-seeds so aggressively it behaves like a perennial. You plant it once. It produces seeds, and the following year it is back without an invitation. It has fleshy leaves, a slightly salty and tangy flavor, and it is high in protein and minerals. It comes in red, golden, and green varieties. It tolerates drought and saline soils better than almost any common leafy green. Before spinach and chard dominated European gardens, orache was what people grew. It was simply forgotten because it fit no modern commercial logic. Number 3. Scorzonera hispanica, a black-skinned root with white flesh, biennial to perennial depending on how you manage it. If you do not harvest it in the first year, it thickens, flowers, produces seeds, and in suitable soil eventually forms a dense colony. The flavor has a faint resemblance to artichoke. It was common in European kitchen gardens until the early 20th century. Then standardized carrots and parsnips took over the catalogs, and it slipped into obscurity despite an inulin content that would interest any modern nutritionist. Number 4. Common Sorrel, Rumex acetosa. Many gardeners still know this one, but few realize how self-sufficient it is once established. Perennial. It comes back every year, handles frost, and produces leaves from the very first weeks of spring, when almost nothing else is available in the kitchen garden. The sour flavor comes from oxalic acid, the same found in spinach, but in higher concentration. The leaves work in soups, sauces for fish, and omelets. It also spreads by seed on its own if you let it bolt once. Number 5. Lovage, Levisticum officinale. It is called perpetual celery, or Maggi plant in Germany, named after the bouillon brand that long used its extract. It is a perennial that can reach 6 feet tall and come back for decades. All parts are edible: leaves, stems, seeds, roots. The flavor is intense, like celery but deeper. One single plant is enough to flavor the soups and stews of an entire family through the whole season. It needs nothing once established. This is the kind of plant grandmothers kept in a corner of the garden and whose grandchildren no longer know the name. Number 6. Patience Dock Rumex patientia, also called perpetual spinach, related to sorrel but without the sharp acidity and with larger leaves and a more generous yield. A robust perennial, it handles very low temperatures and compacted soils. In parts of Eastern Europe, it is still grown regularly as a spring vegetable. It produces very early in the season, covers the garden in large dark green leaves, and comes back without fail year after year. Practically unknown to contemporary Western gardeners. Number 7. Tuberous Chervil, Cherophyllum bulbosum, an umbellifer that produces small tubers with a sweet flavor, somewhere between chestnut and hazelnut. Biennial, it establishes itself and sets seed in cool, well-drained soil. It was a common vegetable in French kitchen gardens through the 19th century. Today, it is nearly impossible to find commercially. The seeds require cold stratification to germinate, which helps explain why it naturally drops seed in autumn and produces seedlings the following spring with no intervention at all. Second group. The Edible Invaders. Plants that self-seed so aggressively that some gardeners treat them as weeds, without knowing they are nutritionally superior to what they are intentionally growing. Number 8. Purslane. Purslane. Portulaca oleracea. I'm going to be direct about this one. If you have purslane in your garden and you are pulling it out, you are throwing away one of the most omega-3 dense leafy vegetables that exists. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition documented that purslane contains more alpha-linolenic acid than any other known land plant. It grows in heat, in poor soil, between paving stones, in pathways. It self-seeds massively. Most gardeners spend their summer pulling it up. The Greeks, Turks, and Mexicans have been cooking it for thousands of years. Number 9. Amaranth. Amaranthus retroflexus and its relatives. Same story. It gets treated as an aggressive weed, which it is, but its young leaves are nutritionally comparable to spinach, and its seeds are a complete protein source, one of the very few plants containing all 9 essential amino acids. NASA studied it as a candidate crop for long-duration space missions, for obvious reasons. In your garden, it shows up uninvited, grows fast, and produces thousands of seeds. The question is not how to get rid of it, but how to use it. Number 10. New Zealand Spinach, Tetragonia tetragonioides, an annual that behaves like a perennial in frost-free regions and that reliably self-seeds elsewhere. It handles temperatures that ordinary spinach cannot tolerate, especially the summer heat that sends spinach to seed by June. It produces all summer long, spreading horizontally to cover the soil with thick, slightly acidic leaves, and it comes back year after year by self-seeding. Joseph Banks brought it to Europe after Captain Cook's expedition in 1769. It had its moment, then disappeared from mainstream catalogs. Number 11. Garden Cress Lepidium sativum. Annual, it is self-seeding, with almost mechanical regularity in any garden where it has been allowed to go to seed once. It grows in 10 to 15 days from seed without prepared soil and without any inputs. Seeds will germinate on a damp paper towel, a simple test many people try in the kitchen. Garden Cress is rich in vitamin C, iron, and calcium. It was consumed long before romaine lettuce and cultivated rocket became the norm. Number 12. Wild Rocket, Diplotaxis tenuifolia. Different from the annual cultivated rocket Aruca sativa, Wild Rocket is a perennial that returns every year and self-seeds abundantly. Its flavor is more intense, more pungent, more complex. It grows in cracks, along path edges, in stony and rocky soils. Once established in a garden, it is practically impossible to remove, which is precisely the property you would want in a leafy vegetable. It produces usable leaves through much of the year, it handles moderate frost, and it asks for nothing. Number 13. Corn salad, Valerianella locusta, also called mache or lamb's lettuce. It self-seeds with a generosity that surprises gardeners who discover it. In soil lightly disturbed in autumn, seeds that fell in summer germinate and form dense rosettes that overwinter. It grows at temperatures where nothing else grows. It does not need watering outside of abnormally dry periods. Wild corn salad has a more pronounced flavor and firmer texture than the commercial varieties selected for greenhouse production. Once you have let one plant go to seed in your garden, you will probably have it forever. Number 14. Daubenton's Kale, Brassica oleracea variety ramosa, a perennial kale propagated by cuttings that few gardeners still know. It does not produce a head, not a single large vegetable to harvest at once. Instead, it produces tender shoots throughout the year which regrow after each cut. It propagates easily from cuttings pushed into damp soil. In favorable conditions, it can live and produce for decades. Some families in Brittany have strains of Daubenton's Kale going back several generations. It is not in mainstream catalogs because it cannot be sold as F1 seed. Third group, the underground workers. They work below the surface, out of sight, and multiply without being asked. Number 15. Jerusalem Artichoke, Helianthus tuberosus. Many people know this one. Fewer realize how hard it is to control once established, which is precisely the argument in its favor if your goal is production without maintenance. One tuber left in the ground gives a plant the following year. Tubers multiply underground every season. The plant can reach 10 feet, produces yellow flowers in autumn, and provides tubers rich in inulin, a prebiotic documented in several clinical studies for its effects on gut flora. It tolerates frost, drought, and poor soils. It spreads. That is its main flaw and its main quality. Number 16. Chinese Artichoke, Stachys affinis. It has small, spiral-shaped tubers. They are crunchy, with a mild flavor similar to artichoke. The plant multiplies each year from tubers left in the ground, gradually covering the planted area. Introduced to France in 1882 by botanist Pailleux, it was common in many kitchen gardens in the early 20th century, then it practically disappeared from ordinary gardens. The distinctive spiraled knobs are eaten raw and salads are cooked. No particular maintenance is required once established. Number 17. Wild garlic, Allium ursinum, also called Ramsons. It colonizes cool, shaded undergrowth with a regularity that can resemble invasion. Once planted or naturally established in the right conditions, it returns every spring, spreads by bulbs and seed, and eventually covers large areas. The leaves taste of garlic without the intensity of the cloves. They are eaten fresh, in pesto, or cooked. They are rich in sulfur compounds which are documented for cardiovascular effects in the medical literature. The season is short, from March to May, but the density of production during that window is remarkable. Number 18. Mashua Tropaeolum tuberosum, also called Tuberous nasturtium. It is an Andean plant that produces tubers underground, while its climbing stems cover trellises above. The tubers have a sharp, slightly bitter flavor when raw that softens considerably with cooking. It spreads from tubers left in the ground from one season to the next in regions without extreme frost. The Incas cultivated it across hundreds of thousands of hectares. It was the security crop, the one that grew at altitude when other crops failed. The West has barely integrated Mashua into its gardens, which seems like a fairly obvious missed opportunity. Number 19. Yacon, Smolanthus sonchifolius, also called earth pear. Originally from the Andes, it produces two types of tubers: propagation rhizomes that give next year's plants, and edible storage tubers with a slightly sweet flavor and a texture close to crunchy pear. The key feature of Yacon is that its sugars are mainly fructooligosaccharides, not metabolized by the human body, making it a naturally low glycemic index vegetable. Studies published in Food Chemistry and the Journal of Ethnopharmacology have documented its effects on blood sugar regulation. In light, well-drained soil, rhizomes left in the ground regenerate the plant every year. Number 20. Egyptian walking onion, Allium X proliferum. This one is almost a textbook case. At the top of its stems, instead of flowers, it produces small bulbils. The bulbils swell until they bend under their own weight and touch the ground, where they take root and form new plants. The plant literally moves through your garden, advancing each year in the direction the stems lean. It produces edible underground bulbs, hollow stems you can use like chives, and the top bulbils that serve as new planting material. No maintenance, no replanting, automatic multiplication. It has been cultivated since at least antiquity and seems to have been forgotten in modern Western gardens in favor of standardized annual onions. Fourth group, the Climbers and Shrubs, plants that take up vertical or horizontal space and once established, do not leave. Number 21st, Orpine sedum telefium, also called stonecrop, a perennial, hardy succulent that grows in the most difficult soils, rocky, dry, and shallow. The young leaves and stems are edible with a slightly tangy flavor. It spreads from cuttings that root even when left lying on the soil surface. It survives droughts that would kill most common vegetables. Scandinavians consumed it regularly before imported standardized vegetables took over. It is the vegetable for those corners of the garden where nothing else will grow. Number 22, Tree Purslane, Atriplex halamus. It is a semi-evergreen shrub that can reach 6 feet and produces silver edible leaves through much of the year. It tolerates salt, drought, poor soils, and alkaline conditions. In Mediterranean regions, it grows in conditions that would kill most cultivated species. Its leaves have a natural salty flavor, which makes them usable directly in salads or cooked. Once planted, it needs no maintenance and can live for decades. It is a shrub, not an annual plant, which partly explains why modern nurseries do not make it a central product. Number 23, Comfrey symphytum officinale. Technically not a vegetable in the common sense, but a plant whose young leaves are eaten when cooked, whose flowers are edible, and whose primary value in the garden is as a mineral accumulator and compost activator. Its roots go deep, pulling minerals from lower soil layers to the surface, and when the leaves fall or are cut, they enrich the top layer. You cannot truly eliminate it once established. Root fragments left in the soil regenerate the plant. It is a nuisance in a conventional garden and a tool in a thoughtful one. Number 24, Sea Kale, Cramba maritima. A perennial brassica, it first produces broad blue-green leaves, then flowering stems that can be blanched and eaten like asparagus. It tolerates sea spray, wind, sandy, and nutrient-poor soils. Once its thick taproot is well established, it returns each year with clockwork reliability. Traditionally grown in British coastal gardens, it was present in London markets in the 18th century. It has almost completely disappeared from commercial production, but in the garden it behaves with the toughness of a plant that evolved to survive on wind-blasted cliffs. Number 25, Garlic Chives, Allium tuberosum, also called Chinese chives or nira. Perennial, it returns every year from its bulbs, and it self-seeds generously if allowed to flower. The flat leaves have a mild garlic flavor. The white flower buds are delicate and edible. The whole plant can be blanched to soften the flavor further. It has been used in East Asia as an everyday vegetable for thousands of years. In the West, you sometimes find it in garden centers listed as an ornamental plant with no label mentioning it is entirely edible. In ordinary sunny soil, it forms dense clumps that widen every year, and it asks for nothing. Those are the 25. I am not going to tell you it will change your life or revolutionize your garden. It might not do anything dramatic. What I can tell you is that most of these plants are available through specialty seed suppliers, seed-saving organizations, or directly from gardeners who have too much and would be happy to give some away. None of them are expensive to get started with. Several are free if you look. The commercial model that has dominated horticulture since the 1950s selected for plants that required the most regular interventions. Seeds repurchased every year, soluble fertilizers, repeated treatments. That was not an accident. That was a model. These 25 plants do not fit that model. They produce without you filling out an annual order form. That is exactly why they disappeared from the catalogs.